you've been a stinging critic of the Obama nuclear deal, a very consequential critic of it as well. And obviously that has changed enormously over the past few years under Trump. But it can sometimes be hard to figure out what Trump thinks victory would look like. Because he seems to flit slightly between wanting regime change or just wanting a weakened regime, and it can kind of feel hard to figure that out. What do you think his red lines are, and what do you think his red lines should be?
So Trump's made it pretty clear what his red lines are. Iran shall never get a nuclear weapon. I don't think Trump has endorsed regime change. I do think he has some sympathy for the Iranian people. On February 28th, when he announced major military operations, he talked about severely degrading their missile capability, their military capability, which includes their naval and air forces. He wanted to weaken and seriously degrade their war-making capability. And most important to him is he wanted to make sure that Iran didn't have the ability to build nuclear weapons. So I think for Trump, he understands that the fatal flaw of the Obama deal of 2015 was that for the first time, the United States surrendered on the enrichment issue. Right? There were 5 UN Security Council resolutions saying Iran must suspend enrichment and reprocessing of plutonium. Trump understood that what Obama did was he gave away that core capability to Iran. He put a bunch of restrictions on. Most of them were temporary restrictions. Most of them would sunset over time, 10 years, 15 years. And at some point, Iran would emerge after the expiration of the JCPOA, which is only 4 years away from now, with an industrial-sized enrichment capability, with zero nuclear breakout capability, with multiple enrichment sites buried under mountains, and Iran would then be able to protect that enrichment capability with tens of thousands of missiles that it could rain in on U.S. forces, U.S. embassies, U.S. allies, and ultimately an intercontinental ballistic missile program that could target the United States of America. So Trump ripped up the deal because he understood that Iran was on a patient pathway to nuclear weapons. And so his red line is no enrichment, no reprocessing. I'm not going to give you the capability to build nuclear weapons, because if you really want civilian nuclear energy, so Brendan, here's the real question. If you're Iran and you really want civilian nuclear energy, which is what Iran has claimed they want, not weapons, what have they sustained in order to get that civilian nuclear energy? Punishing sanctions that's probably cost them at least $1 trillion, right? 2 wars that has cost them their military and their supreme leader and a good part of their leadership. At least 7 rounds of protests from their people that they had to slaughter their way through. All for civilian nuclear energy, where like 22 countries around the world, they could have had civilian nuclear energy without enrichment or reprocessing and just bought the fuel rods from the international market.
Yeah.
That sounds ludicrous. And Trump knows it's ludicrous. And he knows that if he gives them enrichment, they're going to turn that into weapons-grade uranium, and then they're going to fashion that into a warhead, and then they're going to put that on a ballistic missile or an intercontinental ballistic missile. And even if they never fire it, now they have the ultimate weapon of blackmail. So I hope Trump holds that line and doesn't get out-negotiated by very savvy Iranian negotiators, including Arakchi, the foreign minister, who was part of the negotiations in 2015 and ran circles around then Secretary John Kerry and lead negotiator Wendy Sherman. So that would be a red line that I think Trump needs to stick to. I also think a second red line is we have to put severe restrictions on Iran's missile production capability. Right? We can leave them with some missiles and some launchers, but we must make sure that they can never get back to producing 100 or more missiles a month. In fact, they were on a trajectory to get to about 8,000 to 10,000 missiles, maybe even actually 11,000 missiles in about 2.5 years. Now imagine Iran with 11,000 ballistic missiles, right? This nuclear infrastructure where they can break out or sneak out to a weapon. And then they would control Hormuz, not temporarily, but permanently, because there'd be nothing we could do about it. There's no way we would go to war with a nuclear-armed Iran with 10,000 ballistic missiles and ICBMs, 500,000 drones, and a Chinese and Russian-built military. That would have been a permanent stranglehold over the global economy.